In emergency centers around the country, our urgent calls for help are answered as quickly as possible. But when even that is not fast enough, we are forced to depend on our own ingenuity. I'm William Shatner. Tonight, true stories of unlikely heroes and tragic twists of fate on Rescue 911. Early on the morning of Friday, May 5th, 1989, a young woman we'll call Karen walked out of her apartment in Tucson, Arizona, with her 2.5-year-old son, Eric.
It was about 7 o'clock. Me and my son Eric went to the laundromat that's inside the apartment complex to do our laundry.
Go home and I'll fix your breakfast, okay? Stay right here and play the airplane until my mom does the laundry, okay?
Karen's husband had already gone to work. She had a few more chores to do before leaving for work herself.
And we dropped off the laundry, and then we were coming back to the apartment. And I noticed a kid on the second floor apartment, and he looked at me. And then we just looked away and kept walking. Somebody knocked on the door, and I answered it, and it was that kid. And he said, "I'm bored, I don't have anything to do, can I come in?"
Hi.
And I said, "No, I'm getting ready for work." So I shut the door and I locked it. I went and I got in the shower. All I remember was I was very worried about Eric. I was begging him to let me see what my son was doing. And I just went in the bedroom and I just started yelling because I couldn't find Eric. And he knocked me down on the bed. I couldn't push him off. I couldn't do anything. And then I looked and my little boy was in the closet hiding in a box in a corner.
Get back.
And then I was saying, not here, you know, not in front of my son.
You can be quiet. Come here, baby.
And then I went and I reached for Eric.
Thinking quickly, Karen then managed to convince her attacker that she had to call work and warn them she'd be late.
And then he bent down to watch the numbers I was dialing.
So closely watched, she could not dial 911.
And so I dialed my friend Scott's number because I was scared and I wanted somebody to come, and nobody was going to be coming home for a long time.
The way her voice was, I could tell there was something wrong. And she said she couldn't make it to work.
Are you okay?
So I asked her if she was okay. She said no. I asked her if she wanted me to come over. And she said, yeah, she did want me to come over.
Because Karen couldn't say what was wrong in front of her attacker, Scott didn't know what to expect.
And I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I didn't know what was going on.
Karen was still pretending she was on the phone with someone at the place where she worked. But when her assailant wasn't looking, she quietly hung up and redialed 911.
I didn't know if I was going to have a second chance to dial a number because I was scared. And if I screwed it up, I wouldn't get another chance.
911, what is the emergency?
Is this where I work at?
What's wrong, ma'am?
I'm supposed to be at work right now.
Uh-huh.
Okay? I can't leave the house right now.
What's wrong? Is somebody there?
Yeah.
Okay. I want you to stay on the line and talk to the police. Don't hang up, okay?
It was something that you could feel, something that you felt across the phone line. It just slapped you in the face. Something was wrong.
I'm going to stay on the line with you until they answer. Don't hang up.
Okay.
Police,
As soon as Karen's call went through to the police, her name and address automatically came up on the screen.
and I'm supposed to be going to work in a few minutes, and I can't go right now because I have some problems at home right now.
Okay. You need an officer sent out?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you telling me something like that you don't want somebody else to hear?
Right.
Okay. Is there a man there?
Yeah.
Your boyfriend?
No.
Husband?
No.
Is this person armed?
No.
Is he standing right next to you?
Yeah.
Are you in immediate danger? Is he a dangerous person?
Yeah.
Okay, but he does not have any weapons.
Right.
Okay. Do you think if I let you go, get off the phone, are you going to be okay for a few minutes?
I don't know.
Okay. Because if I keep you on the phone, you may get suspicious, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Okay. We'll get some help out to you in just a few moments, okay? 4045 North.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Police operator Eva de Niegra immediately coded Karen's call and passed it to dispatch.
At first, I had made it just a slightly lower priority, and then I turned around and told the dispatcher, no, I'm changing that to a 1. There's something wrong. It has to be a priority 1.
Tried to tell the desk that there's someone there that she didn't want to be there. However, she didn't say who it was, and she couldn't tell us right
On
away
patrol in
whether
the
she was
area,
in
police
security or
trainee
not.
Mike Strong and Officer James Williamson were the first to respond to the call.
The dispatcher was almost at a loss for words. I could feel her hesitancy. I could feel her concern. From what she was saying, I knew that we had something very unusual.
I felt a little better. I knew the police were coming. And then I heard Scott's truck, the music, and I said, now you're in trouble, that's my husband. And then I went to run towards my front door.
She met me halfway between my truck and her apartment, screaming, hold the door, don't let him out. So I told her, take my keys, sit in my truck, and no matter what, do not unlock the door.
Still unsure what had happened, Karen's friend Scott went into her apartment as police officers arrived at the front of the complex.
We weren't sure exactly where the apartment was. The last word we had, the suspect was still in the area. We didn't want to spook him, so we parked out front and came through on foot.
I saw a guy standing at the door that I had never seen before. He followed me right off the door to my truck. When she saw both of us, she just went crazy. She started screaming, and so I chased him. He went into the apartment, and I didn't follow him in. I went back to the apartment and called 911 back.
Officers arrested an 18-year-old suspect at the scene. He was subsequently convicted of kidnapping and sexual assault.
What I thought the victim did in this case was extraordinary. A tragic situation was thrust upon her. Present during the assault was a young child, her child, which gave her probably more concern. The situation that presented itself to the victim in this case was ultimately won by her because she used her wits. She didn't panic.
What she did was excellent. She thought very quickly, and she took a chance that she would be able to get help.
She probably wasn't hurt as bad as she would have been had she not kept her wits about her. And she allowed us to make an arrest that we probably wouldn't have been able to make had she panicked.
Months have gone by. Karen is getting counseling, and she and her family have made permanent changes in the way they live their lives.
Every night before my little boy goes to bed, he says he's scared, and I have to sit on the edge of the bed with him. He tells me he's afraid. When I ask him why, he said, that man will come back. I think that when you have kids, you have to have locks high enough for them not to be able to reach them, so that you know who comes in and who goes out. And if somebody knocks on the door, I look through the people, and if I don't recognize them, I just won't answer the door.
I think she was very brave. I mean, that has to be a terrifying experience, and she thought of something to do and did it. Her child was there. It had to be very terrifying. She's very brave.
Next.
The brutal part of it, looking at his eyes and not seeing anybody looking back.
Millie Obie Craig has been a fire and ambulance dispatcher for 9 years in the small town of Kingwood, Texas. In that time, she's handled almost every kind of emergency call imaginable. On July 1st, 1989, for the first time, Millie handled a dispatcher's worst nightmare.
I was working the morning shift, the Saturday of the 4th of July weekend, and like most Saturdays, the first half of the shift was extremely slow.
At her home a mile away, Millie's son David was visiting from out of town with his fiancée, Cynthia Damo.
I get up and I go outside, and Dad normally cuts the front yard first, but he'd cut the back. You know, so he came over and sat down, so we were sitting in lawn chairs, and then Cynthia came outside, and so we're just talking about whatever, my new job, or Cynthia might get married or something. I mean, there was so much happening, we couldn't help but be excited about it. I wasn't really looking at him, I was kind of in thought. And I heard his glass of water drop, and he went into what I explained as a series of seizures.
Obie Craig's heart had stopped beating. Millie was the only dispatcher on duty that morning.
Okay, yes, dispatch? Mrs. Craig. Mr. Craig is something. David.
He's having a stroke or a heart attack or something.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
all right, goodbye.
Mike! You got a call. It's at my house.
She had to remain at her post.
At the very end of the phone call, the personal emotion started to hit me. I think my heart probably dropped into my stomach.
Cross Street Fairwood Village Drive. We need another dispatch at the station immediately.
I couldn't leave until another dispatcher showed up. We have 36,000 people out here. Somebody else could have had a problem.
Kathy Splendido and her husband had just finished breakfast when Millie's call of a possible cardiac arrest came over their pagers.
There was an intensity in her voice that I had never heard before in 9 years. And I thought, it's somebody we know. My heart was going a mile a minute because it takes a really gutsy person to stand ground when she knows that her husband is home, maybe dying.
I had to know if he had a pulse or not, because if you're going to do CPR, then you better need it. It's very, very dangerous to do CPR on someone whose heart's going, because you can just stop it doing CPR. I mean, you're compressing the heart against the backbone. It's time, and you know it's time, and you lean over, and you're fixing to do CPR on a human being, and he felt cold, and he had all the signs. You know, the eyes were way back in his head, turning purple, and his muscles were still contracted. I mean, but they don't tell you about all that. They don't tell you that it's going to be rough on you.
I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't know what he was doing. I didn't know how serious it was, but I knew it was serious from David's tone of voice when he was yelling into the phone. It was beginning to sink into me that he may be dead. And, you know, there was nothing I could do.
David did the CPR, and I was just standing there watching, and it was weird because you could see Mr. Craig, the violent motions had stopped. He lay very still, and at that moment, I got the vision of him in a coffin, and it really scared me.
Paramedics Neil Botting and Mike Lagudas had been at the station when Millie got the call.
Normally, you don't treat one cardiac any different than you do another, but the situation with this one being the person that I knew, there were a lot of things going through my mind. Were we going to be able to reverse the problem and bring him back? And the other thing that was going through my mind is what if we didn't? Upon arrival at the back of the house, we found David performing CPR on his dad, and we quickly reassessed Mr. Craig's vital signs and determined that he did not have a pulse and he was not breathing.
I raced up to the station and went in and said something sweet like, "Millie, go home," and she left. And then I sat down at the console and dispatched to the location once more. Mike Lagudas was the paramedic on duty. When he heard my voice as opposed to Millie's voice, Then and only then did he announce that CPR was in progress, because he didn't want to say that while she was sitting at the console.
CPR in progress. CPR in progress.
We continued CPR until we set up our defibrillator. Upon taking the reading through the paddles, we determined that Mr. Craig was in ventricular fibrillation and delivered a shock of 200 joules, which is the minimum starting delivery for an adult who's in cardiac arrest. I had the big fear that he wasn't going to make it, and I didn't quite know how I was going to deal with that with respect to Millie being such a close friend, her husband being such a close friend, and being able to tell her this.
He went out of defibrillation, and he went into a very slow idioventricular rhythm, and it did not generate a pulse. So CPR was resumed while we got set to start an intravenous line and start to administer some cardiac drugs.
It had been more than 5 minutes since Ovi's heart had stopped beating.
We, at that point, saw what was a treatable rhythm with additional CPR and medications. So things were looking up at that point.
When I walked up the drive, David was walking down the drive to meet me and said something like, "You don't want to go up there." And I said, "Yes, I thought that I did."
1, 2, 3, let's go up. Okay.
I'm not sure at what point I realized that they had shocked his chest, and I don't know at what point I knew that they had done CPR.
Now let's go ahead and elevate it.
And he was sort of looking around, and his eyes were all red, bloodshot. And I spoke to him, and he sort of looked at me, but I knew he didn't see me.
11 minutes after his devastating heart attack, O.V. was fully conscious.
He just woke up. That's a hard concept for me, because Cynthia and I witnessed the brutal part of it. I mean, watching a human being fight for life. And his heart stopped. He went to the hospital. They did the heart catheterization. He's laying in the hospital. That's nothing. Looking at his eyes and not seeing anybody looking back is the part that they don't ever tell you about. And that night, you know, they said, "Well, y'all can go home." And I said, "Well, I can't." So I spent the night. Here I'd saved his life. I knew it. The doctors had told me. But I knew it. And I wanted to make sure that I knew that he was okay.
54-year-old O.V. Craig's sudden death heart attack caused no muscle damage to his heart. With medication, he can lead a normal life.
You kind of like for your child to feel a little indebted to you as he grows up, and you want him to feel a little, my father did this for me, and he did that for me, and he does feel that way. But then all of a sudden, the situation turns, and now I owe him my life. If my son had not done the CPR, or Cynthia had not made the call, my wife dispatched the paramedics, I would have had no chance at all. I am so grateful, because it's the difference in living and dying. I even asked one time, well, what do you do with a debt like that? And they said, well, be prepared to save someone else.
If somebody asks me, why would I take CPR? I'd say, well, you got a really easy choice. You can take CPR and have a tool where you could save someone's life. If you don't, then you can watch them die. I mean, you can just sit there and sob with them and oh, you're sincere and you're really sorry, but they're going to lay there and they're going to die.
If David hadn't been home, I would have come home and found O.V. dead in the afternoon, because he was clinically dead.
It puts it all in perspective for you. I mean, I gave my dad a hug, whenever I'd come home anyway. But now I give him a hug. And I can't.
If you are interested in learning CPR, contact the nearest chapter of the American Red Cross. Next.
We were traveling down University Place when suddenly the rear door to the ambulance came open and a body came flying out.
Shortly after midnight on October 18, 1985, patrolman David Mansu stopped to check on a car parked by the side of the road. Between the two occupants of the car, his flashlight beam picked up a hypodermic needle. The West Windsor, New Jersey policeman called for backup, and a chain of events began that would ultimately put dozens of lives in jeopardy.
I had begun searching the car and had in fact found drugs inside the car. And I alerted Patrolman Edwards that the gentleman was under arrest.
When Mansu arrested the man for possession of cocaine and a syringe, he suddenly doubled over.
He was clenching his chest severely with his arms, adamant about the fact that he was having a heart attack.
2 ambulances arrived almost immediately, with 3 volunteer emergency medical technicians and paramedic Nick Simzak.
We got out of the vehicle, went over to assess the patient. He was extremely uncooperative at that point. He was hunched down and was very tight, wouldn't move. A friend of his who was with him at the time told my partner that he had a history of diabetes and he had been doing cocaine for a couple of days.
All right, let's go.
They stabilized the suspect for transport, and all 4 got into one ambulance with him.
At that point, I advised the driver that I would be following the ambulance in a patrol car, and if there were any problems with this individual, Mr. Lenz, to pull over, and I would attend to those problems.
While we had him in the back of the ambulance, he still was acting disoriented, confused, uncooperative, and showing signs of pretty much of how a diabetic or hypoglycemic patient would act. We had started the IV on him, and Mr. Lenz pulled the gun on us.
Get out of here!
He sat down next to me on the bench, and he said, "This gun has a hollow point bullet in it. You know what that can do." At that point, I said, "Look, I have a wife, and I have 2 children that I love very much, and I'd really like to see them again." And with that, he turned and he turned the gun off of me and went after Bill. He had Bill up against the side of the ambulance, and he was screaming, "Tell the police to get back or I'll kill him."
Tell him back off now!
When he started to scream, "You're going to kill him, I'm going to kill him right now," I looked up at Bill, and Bill's eyes were almost saying, "Please, I don't want to die." So that's when I got back into the ambulance.
I'll shoot you! Get away, cop! Come on, let's go! Drive!
EMT Joan Myers was driving.
I tapped on the window, trying to indicate to her to turn the ambulance off, but she never acknowledged that.
With the lives of 4 hostages at stake, Mansu put out the call for backup.
237, I have a hostage situation here at the hospital.
I felt that I failed the victims in the fact that we were allowed to be tricked by Mr. Lenz faking the heart attack, and that we were so concerned about his well-being and his welfare that we failed to forcibly pull his arms apart.
Mansu followed the ambulance with no idea what was going on inside.
We were traveling down University Place at a speed of approximately 35 to 40 miles an hour when suddenly the rear door to the ambulance came open and a body came flying out. I was certain that Mr. Lenz had shot this individual and thrown him out the back door as some indication to us that he was serious.
Are you okay? You okay? Yeah. Yeah. It's just a cut. He's not shot. It's just a cut. I'm going to continue after the ambulance. You want to take care of him? I got him.
He indicated to me that he had taken it upon himself to dive out the back of the ambulance.
I do remember looking at Bill like, "Do you want to go with me?" And I just opened the back door of the ambulance, and the next thing I know, I was getting up off the ground. The hardest thing was leaving the other people in the vehicle, because you felt like I was abandoning them.
The gunman took over the radio from Joan Myers and threatened to kill the 3 remaining hostages if the cops didn't return his cocaine and his glasses.
The reason why we stopped at Dunkin' Donuts was because he said something about being a diabetic, and he said he needed something to eat or sugar. So Billy went in, We watched him, and Michael says, you know, stay right here, 'cause I can see him. He came in the front seat, and the gun was held to my head. And I had no idea whether the safety was on or off. I didn't want to see the gun. I didn't want to know it was there.
Patrolman Mansue and Sergeant Bill Clark were also watching.
My main concern was that now we had a hostage, Bill Manuel, out of the ambulance. He was the one who was chosen to go in and make the order at Dunkin' Donuts. And that I did not want to allow him to re-enter the ambulance. Figured we had him out now, we were going to take him out. We were going to leave him out. Coming out. I'm not going to let him get back in the ambulance. As Bill Manuel exited the Dunkin' Donuts, I grabbed him.
Before I got out, Lenz told me to come back or else he was going to kill the other two that were in there. I told him I had to get back, and he says no.
Suddenly, the ambulance came around the corner. We could see that Mr. Lenz was now in the front seat, and a dialogue began between myself and Mr. Lenz. He was demanding that we give Mr. Manuel back to him. Nobody's going to get hurt, Michael. Everything's going to be okay. Come on, just calm down. Obviously, we could not have fired upon him because of Joan Meyer's position. We were not going to put her in any more danger than she was already in. Can't have him back, Mike. Just calm down. Come on. We don't want to hurt anybody, Mike. Come on. Just calm down. Just want to go off, Mike. Come on, Michael. Just calm down. Let's talk about this, Michael. Come on. Come on. Nobody's going to get hurt, Michael. The ambulance stopped. And it appeared to me that Mr. Lenz now moved from the front of the ambulance to the rear of the ambulance. Take it easy, Michael. I got the attention of Joan Myers. She opened the door when I reached up and grabbed her and threw her back to Sergeant Clark. I then trained my weapon on the open doorway to the ambulance, hoping to see Mr. Lenz once again.
I think relief was almost too overwhelming, but at the same time I'm wondering, is Rory okay? Is he going to be as lucky as we are?
The last hostage, Rory Murphy, was forced into the driver's seat at gunpoint, and the ambulance took off. When we continue.
I was carrying a 13-shot automatic, so I figured the best thing to do was to open up with an automatic, and I knew I couldn't miss the guy from that distance.
Three of the 4 EMTs the gunman had taken hostage had gotten away. His persistent demands for the return of his cocaine were not being met, and the life of the final hostage was still in his hands. As the ambulance headed out of town, only one policeman kept it under close surveillance.
Suspect pulled into a housing development. After he pulled in, I pulled in and turned off my lights and parked on a side street. So I just kind of like laid low for a few minutes. My car was turned off, the headlights were off, and I slumped down in the seat.
Come here, Champagne, come here. Daddy missed you. How are you, huh?
By radio, a meeting was arranged. At the suspect's insistence, it was set for a nearby McDonald's. Police Chief Joe Mashinsky and his men arrived first.
We have a bad situation here. And this isn't really the place to try to resolve it. We're too close to the highway. What we got to try to do is get this...
I advise our people to send Officer Funda up to the bowling alley to provide some cover. But I was going to attempt to either try to get the hostage away from the individual or do what I had to do if, you know, the situation warranted. I'm preparing myself that if I have to shoot, that I am going to shoot.
The gunman was still insisting on the return of his cocaine, but Mashinsky convinced him to drive to the deserted parking lot of the local bowling alley, where his demands for food and liquor would be met.
Alongside the building, there's railroad ties, and I thought maybe I could get the ambulance in a position where one would have to get out to get the Jack Daniels and the roast beef. So I set him on the railroad tie, and I waved him to come across. I was hoping that the ambulance driver was going to step out of the ambulance. And when he did, I was just going to step in and, you know, I was carrying a 13-shot automatic. And like I said, I also feared for my own life, so I figured the best thing to do was to open up with an automatic, and I knew I couldn't miss the guy from that distance. As he reached out, he looked down and he saw me. And I tried to whisper to him to open the door.
Well, then open the door, Reed. Don't try anything or I swear I'll blow your head off.
With his last hostage gone, the gunman took off alone in the stolen ambulance.
The vehicle is leaving out on Route 130.
At that point, all the police cars started giving pursuit. This is the first time it was actually a high-speed chase. At this point, I think speeds reached around 90 miles an hour or so. I was right in the middle of a pack of, I'd say, 12 to 16 police cars.
Went into the northbound lanes past the ambulance. I slammed on my brakes. They both spun off the highway.
The ambulance came to a stop in a grassy field.
Cars are sliding to a stop. I'm sliding in behind them. Try not to hit the car in front of me, hoping the guy behind me doesn't hit me. All the police officers trained their gun on the ambulance, waited for something to happen.
The life-threatening situation now had really diminished. Could you really legitimately shoot this individual now? He had no hostage.
It was a standoff. They decided to try another way. 20-year veteran Lieutenant Dan Rogers, due to retire in less than a year, was called in as a negotiator.
I felt some danger because you don't really know who you're dealing with when you first get called out. Anything could go wrong. I mean, he could just raise a gun in my face at any point and, you know, blow me away because it was dark. I couldn't see everything inside there. It was like talking to somebody when you talk to a priest with the screen there, something like that. Didn't have that good of visibility.
Hey, put the gun down now. Nobody's here to hurt you. I don't even have a gun. Look, I'm not even armed.
Lens was starting to come off his high, apparently.
He was claiming that he would kill himself if we attempted to get inside the ambulance.
Michael, it's Dee. Can you hear me?
In answer to the gunman's demands, his ex-wife was brought to the scene.
Yeah, please come out. They said nobody was hurt here. Nobody else outside was hurt. And they just want to help you.
You know, you're starting to sound like one of them.
Michael, nobody's telling me what to say. You say whatever you want.
You say what you want. Why don't you come over here and talk to me?
If you throw the gun out, I will.
You know me better than that. Deanie, I'm sorry that they dragged you over here. I love you a hell of a lot, lady. But, I'm gonna go. Because you don't want to talk to me. I ain't gonna play their game. I asked them for something simple.
We didn't let her talk to him too long. It wasn't making any headway. But it did establish the fact that we were trying to help him and trying to get him out safely, and I think he realized that.
Around 8 the next morning, Rogers was still trying to talk the gunman into surrendering his weapon.
You tell me if I brought your wife out, you give me the gun and come out, pal.
When I was a young cop, we believed in charging into, you know, breaking a door down and taking everybody out forcibly. And over the years, you learn sometimes negotiation is the better way to do it. Most people want a way out, I think.
Nobody's hurt now. Let's go.
He handed the gun to me in pieces, just handed it through the window to me, opened the door, it came out, and he went into my arms and just hugged me.
Come on out. It's all over, kid. Come on, it's all right.
To tell you the truth, when the guy came out, he didn't look dangerous to me. I just really thought just some poor soul that got juiced up on drugs and he didn't know what he was doing. He was just reaching out for something, whether it was help. I really don't know.
When he was lucid, he didn't want to hurt me. He considered me a nice guy. When he wasn't lucid, as I said, he was going to blow my brains out.
My wife was really upset. I remember coming home and just holding on to her. Just holding on to her. It was a long night, but I can remember when it was all over with, thinking it was great. Not only did we get hostages out unhurt, but to get the suspect and get him uninjured, that made it 100% successful. When I was done, I felt real good about it, and I think all the other officers did too.
Less than 8 hours after it began, the incident was over. The gunman was convicted of kidnapping and possession of a weapon and narcotics. He was sentenced to 24 years in prison. All of the 4 former hostages have returned to their field work in emergency medicine. Next.
Fire emergency.
My wife's having a baby now.
How far is the baby out? Entire baby?
Right.
Now tell me, is the baby breathing?
No.
The most extreme emergencies call for the coolest heads and the clearest thinking. But sometimes you have to take what you can get. In the early hours of September 3rd, 24-year-old Sharon Bachman had to settle for her husband, David. In the 4th floor bedroom of their security condominium in Huntington Beach, California, Sharon was having trouble sleeping.
I woke up about 1:30 in the morning, and I woke up thinking that I was having cramps. After 2 cramps, I decided that they weren't really cramps.
She was already a week overdue with her 3rd child.
It's time.
I think so.
Okay.
My wife woke me up and said it was time. And I thought, okay, plenty of time. Time means time to get up, do my little running around bit and go to the hospital.
It's time.
With the other 2 kids, I was in there, but I wasn't a coach. I didn't want to look because I'd get queasy and I'd probably go to the ground. My mom wanted to be there, so this time she was going to be the coach. She was going to go in. Mom, hi. Okay, it's time. When I talked to my mom, I said, I'll call you in about an hour when we're getting ready to leave. It'll be a while yet, don't worry.
While he was gone, they came real fast. I just had like one constant pain. And he doesn't know what to do, so I'm telling him to call 911.
I still thought that meant, okay, well, that means we got to leave for the hospital now. Not an hour from now, but now. And then finally got through to me. Now meant now. She's having a baby right now. So that's when we called 911.
The call came in to 911 dispatcher Richard Comp.
Fire department emergency?
My wife's having a baby now.
Okay. This her first child?
No, it's her 3rd.
Okay, I want you...
labor and
okay,
now.
I understand. Stay on the phone. I'll be right back with you, okay?
Okay, hurry.
Okay.
Nancy, we have a childbirth in progress. We need you to
I called for Nancy to come out and assist and talk to him, to give him instructions on childbirth if necessary, while I dispatch the units to his address.
911 operator Nancy Furman took over the call.
Sir?
Yes?
Okay, I'm going to stay on the phone with you until they get there.
Huntington Engine 46, Huntington Medic 65, respond to grid 422 on a medical aid. It's a childbirth in progress, 3rd child.
Has she delivered yet?
No, but she's upstairs and I'm downstairs.
Is there any way to get a phone near her, sir?
Yeah, we have to disconnect this and take it up there.
Okay, I'll wait, sir. Call me back if we're disconnected.
Okay, you will be disconnected.
Okay, well then just call me right back.
Just 911 again?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He did not want to sever that telephone line. I mean, it was like, if he lost me, that was it for him. I mean, you could just tell a panic. See, I was real surprised by his excitement because this is his 3rd child. So I thought, he's done this more times than I have. I've never had children. He should be telling me what to do. But that wasn't the case.
Fire emergency.
Yes.
Hi.
My wife's having a baby?
Has she had the baby yet?
No, but she says she can't even move it. One right after the other. It's coming, she says.
Her contractions are one right after another?
One right after the other.
Okay, listen to me. Ask her if there's still some time.
The baby is coming out now. I see it.
You see it crowning? Where is your wife at? Is she on the bed?
Oh, my God, I see the head.
Yeah, that's good. Is she on the
toilet, though? She can't move.
She's on the toilet?
Yes.
Go get her off the toilet and get her on the...
Now, the baby is coming out.
Go get her. I'll wait. Get her on the floor.
Get on the floor, Sharon.
Go help her. Go help her and then come back.
I'm here.
Okay.
Lay down, Sharon. Lay down, baby.
We're through. Now's the time. The baby's involved.
Okay, she's on the floor.
Okay, good.
I thought, this isn't going to happen. The paramedics are going to get there before this child's born. I kept crossing my fingers for that. Like, please get there.
Oh, my God, it's a big puzzle.
It's all right. It's all right. Don't worry about the puddle. Have you ever seen a baby born before?
No, it's just like a big clear bag coming out.
Yeah, that's the water. Don't sweat it. That's great. Is the head in, out?
I do.
Listen to me.
Okay.
Is the head out?
What?
Is the head exposed?
No, not yet.
Okay. With each contraction, I want you to place your hand against her vagina and apply firm but gentle pressure to keep the baby's head delivering too fast and tearing her.
Is this above it, you mean?
We have cards that we use that lead us through the different steps for each emergency that calls in. And I read fast. But she was having that baby faster than I could read.
Oh, there's the baby's head. Oh, my God.
No, it's great.
Push, Sharon, push. Come on. Oh.
You're doing fine. I don't want her to tear herself. Don't encourage her to push so much.
You want me to pull anything?
I want you to, with gentle pressure, to keep the baby's head from delivering too fast. I want you to push against her vagina. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Push in or what?
Push again. But, see, she's really...
Shoulders now starting to.
But she's straining, and with her straining, she's going to tear herself. She has not had an episiotomy.
Okay, the baby's out.
Okay, that's great. Congratulations. How far is the baby out? Entire baby?
Way.
Well, that's wonderful. Now tell me, is the baby dry? Is the baby breathing?
No.
Okay, I'm going to tell you what to do.
Okay.
I want you to get a dry towel. That baby's going to be slippery. I want you to get that dry towel, clean out her mouth a little bit. Is it a boy or girl? Hey, this is important.
Her mouth.
Okay, we want to clean out her mouth.
Wait a minute.
You're doing fine, sir. You're doing fine.
It's a boy.
Congratulations. Okay, now what I want to do is I want you to support that baby.
Wait. Come on. Oh, I'm having trouble here.
I know. I want to get the baby. I want to hear that baby crying.
Sharon's holding her upside down, and the baby's like, coughing, starting to cry.
Well, that's good. She's trying to clear its airway.
There it goes. She's crying.
Excellent. She's doing good.
Oh.
Think of the stories you can tell this kid later.
What?
Think of the stories you're going to tell your kid later. Okay.
I knew this was going to happen.
Well, it happens sometimes.
We were away from the hospital. We were worried about this.
Oh, well, yeah, I can understand that. Don't worry about it now. Okay, has she got a big enough and warm enough towel for that baby?
Yeah, it's a big, beach towel type thing.
Okay, good. Okay.
The ambulance is here. I think they're going to have trouble getting in, though.
Oh, yeah, I can see it, yeah. Don't worry about the umbilical cord. They're going to take care of that.
I know.
How's your wife doing?
I saw that on TV. I know that.
Okay, well, good. How's your wife doing?
Huh?
How is your wife doing?
Oh, she's great. She's fine, she said.
Good. Yeah, she's probably glad to have that load out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my mom's going to kill us, though. I can't wait for us to curse, probably.
Oh, you guys did a great job. You did a great job. Okay.
All that money for hospital, and here we have it at home.
I know, isn't it funny? Well, why don't you, I'm going to let you go since the ambulance crew's there and make your wife comfortable, and they'll help you the rest of the way, okay?
Oh, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
The happiest moment was when the call was over. It was overwhelming. We all felt very excited for him and with him. We all were there, in a sense, holding his hand over the phone and listening to that experience, unlike any experience I've ever had before.
The irony is that I'm trying to have children, so this was even made it better for me. In my career, oftentimes I see the lows in people's life, and this was something where I got to see the high, and I got to listen to a baby cry. What a way to have a baby. I mean, if you get past the fear, it's such a natural, wonderful thing to happen that I hope that he will later look back and realize the joy he got to have with his wife. He'll never get to do that again that way.
When paramedics arrived 7 minutes after David's call, they quickly determined that Brian Allen Bachman was a healthy baby boy.
Can't put the experience into words. It's almost like I had the child. Almost, if you could say how a mother feels by having a child, I came as close as a man can get. As close as you can get, I feel.
Okay, the baby looks good. I'll go ahead and update the app guard, and I'll get you an IV or good enough.
I look at David different because I didn't think he really had it in him to deliver the baby. I thought for sure he was going to pass out, and he really didn't. He came through when I needed him the most.
See Mama?
Baby.
Yeah, baby.
My son, he knows where the baby was born and what had happened. He says that 911 helped have the baby.
The tape, it's hilarious. I mean, a lot of people say, you know, oh, look, listen to this guy. I can't, what a jerk. But if you put yourself in those shoes, most people be the same way.
There we go.
Just like Popeye.
In times of crisis, there's nothing more desperately needed than the knowledge of what to do and the courage it takes to do it. The men and women who answer our calls for help and risk their lives to save the life of a stranger are the real heroes of this series. I'm William Shatner. Join me next week for more true stories on Rescue 911.
Find out if you know New Mexico at the New Mexico Product Showcase, June 7th and 8th at the Albuquerque Convention Center.
You've seen the movie. Tomorrow you can see the real-life Bad Fellas when 48 Hours takes an inside look at organized crime. And Thursday, get ready to follow a true story of murder and mayhem as Bill Bixby hosts An American Story.